Now, we have many technologists that come up with awesome gadgets, apps, and toys that ultimately enrich our lives. But sadly, they fail to solve mankind's biggest problems. Now, how can technology solve our educational problem? Now, before I begin, let me state my credentials. I have none. The only certificate I have to my name is a first aid level 1, and even that has expired. But however, as our co-host has said, I am a business science student, and I have a yearning to express my thought, and I think that is my justification for standing before you today. Now, I would like to outline two experiences I've had with education. So, on the 15th of June 2014, I embarked on a journey to Egypt. Upon my arrival in Cairo, I then discovered that the prevalence of diabetes in Egypt as a whole was very high. And in fact, it was a public health problem. I then took it upon myself to do something. And I offered my time to the Diabetes Youth Care Association. We then created this educational program that was both practical and relevant to the locals. Now, I will elaborate further on the program. But the reason why I felt compelled, or the reason why it struck a chord, is because my grandfather has diabetes. My father has recently been diagnosed with diabetes, and therefore the likelihood of me also developing diabetes is quite high. This is why this project spoke to me on a very personal level. The project itself was a symbol of hope. Not only do we train people, but we also improve their linguistic abilities with the IBM Reading Companion, which is essentially a web-based literacy program that uses speech recognition technology that listens and provides feedback. However, with that being said, the biggest challenge out of that whole program was finding a way for us to actually teach people in distant locations. Now, I was hoping, when trying to find a solution that would support hybrid learning, I was hoping that I could find some device, some educational device that was made by Africans for Africa. And this is important because, as we all know, that Africa is the hub of innovation. That is just a fact. And unfortunately, there was no such device. And we then relied on a web meeting software for face-to-face virtual classrooms. It worked well, but I wasn't really that happy. And although I'm still actively involved in that program, I am very proud and excited about the fact that it will be the start of many programs to be implemented in Africa as a whole. South Sudan have already expressed an interest. Now, moving on to my second story. In 2013, Taught to Teach was born with the help of a couple of friends. Now, Taught to Teach is an organization run by students, ideally for students, and therefore it can only be seasonally active. And its greatest attribute was unfortunately its greatest downfall simultaneously. The idea was to provide a hot seat mobile facility around Cape Town. So we'd go to different geographical areas, and then we'd have kids come and ask us questions, math questions that is, that they didn't really understand. So our focus was not to teach, it's rather to be a support structure. Now, as it stood, the program itself wasn't really sustainable. So we decided to amend it. Now, as the name suggests, Taught to Teach. Now, it works on a simple philosophy that parallels Ubuntu, where we advocate collective responsibility for educating our youth. The idea is we'd go to a specific place in Cape Town, teach a couple of kids, thereby installing or instilling a planting a seed, sorry, and then they would then have to do the same elsewhere, thereby, the snowball effect. And I mentioned these two anecdotes because I'd like to highlight two different approaches to learning. Now, you're probably asking yourself, what is hybrid learning? Hybrid learning is when you replace the traditional face-to-face instruction with a web-based online learning system. That's in a nutshell what it is. And I must state emphatically that I'm not really happy with the way the South African education system is set up. Now, I was fortunate enough to have attended the University of Western Cape's Vice Chancellor's talk on access to higher education institutions. However, my biggest problem with the country is that we tend to look at the end result, which is the matric certificate, whereas in not really the foundation or even the process of acquiring knowledge. And my second problem is that we just overly emphasize on having a matric certificate. Hypothetically speaking, what if we were to have 100% pass rate with about 80% aggregate? Would that solve our social problems, namely poverty, lack of entrepreneurship? I don't really think so. Therefore, in me responding to those problems, I generally just cannot understand how the government can allocate so much of our budget to education and yet we fail to see substantive results. Each year, the quality of education and the opportunity of obtaining better marks is jeopardized due to the teaching process being disturbed by teachers striking, textbooks not arriving in time, and other problems. And of the few teachers we have even fewer that are fully qualified. Therefore, I think our only solution is really to incorporate hybrid learning. Now, a possible solution would be for us to then design and utilize an educational device, handheld educational device. This would then, it would be where the educational modules and videos would be uploaded in the student's home language. And this device has to be low cost, user friendly, and in turn it has to support or even take the place of the traditional conventional like textbook teaching methodology. Now, some of you are probably wondering, that's probably impractical, and yes, it's most likely that there would be economic restraints. And in terms of infrastructure, as South Africa, do we actually have the technology or just the infrastructure to actually handle and monitor such a program? And my counter argument would be simple. How then do we expect to gain different results or even potential growth if we still approach technology the same old lackluster way? I mean, yes, the startup costs would be high, and we probably have to have some sort of like a trial basis for this hybrid learning. But ideally, in the long run, it will be both beneficial for the students and the government in sort of like tackling this problem we have. And in concluding, I will reiterate that I do believe that the only way forward for Africa is through the exploration of technology. And it is our responsibility as the youth to advocate this vision and thus acknowledge where we stand in terms of our entrepreneurial attitudes. That is very important. And I would now like to call upon our youth and like-minded students to actually join me in this quest to change our established one-size-fits-all model. Thank you.